the Royal Blue Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Royal Blue Podcast. I'm Phil Kirkbride and today joined by Dave Prentice, Gav Buckland and Sam Carroll as we chew the fat over all the major talking points at Goodison Park, and today reflecting on that wretched performance at Stamford Bridge. The Blues going down 4-0 for the worst performance by some distance of the Carlo Ancelotti era, and the manager quite strongly afterwards questioning the commitment of the players, which we will talk about. And let's get right into it. No messing about. Preno, I'll ask you the same question I asked Carlo at the press conference. What went wrong?
Everton's kicked off. I was just talking to Gav on the way in, and that is the worst Everton performance I have seen since a horrible night, a Wednesday night at Coventry City in 1997, when Everton's performance was so bad that Howard Kendall sent the players back out again to do laps of the pitch because they hadn't put the requisite amount of work rate in, according to him. The players disagreed, they mutinied with him, and it was an absolutely very, very unseemly debacle. 3 days later, Everton played a derby match. What happened? Everton won 2-0. It was so unexpected. Somebody actually played the theme tune to tell us from the unexpected over the tannoy at Goodison after the final whistle.
I suspected that was, yeah.
I'm not suggesting that's going to happen this time round, because that 1997 vintage Liverpool team was significantly inferior to the current one. Yeah. But what was in parallel was the performance, and the work rate. You can understand why Carlo Ancelotti was so desperately disappointed. I mean, Djibril Sidibe had one of those absolute nightmare games where he couldn't put a foot right. You know, every single pass was either into touch or to an opposition player. I think he made one decent challenge all game that prevented Chelsea scoring, but that was it. That can happen sometimes, but not to show the requisite level of work rate. I saw a great stat when Everton beat Chelsea under Duncan Ferguson's tenure. I think that midfield quartet, if you like, won, I think it was 31 tackles in the game. They won, I think it was 15 at the weekend, half the number. And they were just going through the motions, a lot of them. There was no intensity, there was no pressing. And I think Carlo Ancelotti will have learned an awful lot about the players at his disposal. I'm not going to highlight individuals because every single player, the goalkeeper accepted, had an awful game. But there were players out there that weren't putting in the requisite levels of intensity, and that's going to concern Carlo Ancelotti. Actually, it won't concern him. He'll have marked his card. He'll have said, right, well, so you're not going to be part of my future if you can't turn it on an important game at Stamford Bridge, which was pivotal to our European ambitions. I mean, we're not qualifying for the Champions League now. We're very, very unlikely to qualify for the Europa League as a result of that, I think.
Gav, Carlo, among many things he said afterwards, was that for him, and I quote, the game was signed after the first minute, i.e. the die was set. He knew the way the wind was blowing at Stamford Bridge. Did you, on reflection or maybe in real time, were you equally perturbed after 60 seconds?
I was equally, a couple of minutes. I actually started the watching it late because I was staying overnight on a Saturday, and I met somebody before I started watching it who's well known to this podcast, shall we say, and I said, "Oh, don't tell me the score. I'm going to watch the game," and he gave me what was like a knowing look. I think in retrospect, it says, "Don't bother watching it," And as soon as, I get that. It's funny, isn't it? You do get games sometimes you do get games, don't you? But after a minute or two, you think, "Oh, not on it today." And after about 5 minutes, I just thought that it's not happening. Whether it happens with the players warm up, did he know? It's just. Yeah, do you think? I think also the setup of the team, which people have spoken about as well. Then. Well, I don't. You've got a 4, haven't you, in midfield? I mean, I don't know how many times we changed midfield 4 under Carlo. We've got. We've had Gomez has come back into the team. Sigurdsson's played left, maybe played right. We had Bernard's definitely played on both sides. Iwobi's played. Walcott's played. So I don't know how many times he played in. With the 4-4-2 with the midfield 4, it stayed the same. So I think that regardless of whether 4-4-2 works or not, that's one of the problems for me, is that the constant shifting of that 4.
He's got to look at them now, hasn't he?
He's got to look at them, but we can't have it both ways as supporters, can we? Can't say, swap it round so we can have a look at players, and then, hang on a minute, nobody knows what they're doing actually because they're not as well drilled enough, so we can't have it both ways, or maybe we can. So I think that was the issue. I don't think, the more I look at it, whether Keane suited to 4-4-2, because 4-4-2, you've got to, you remember this plan when Howard played 4-4-2 like they all did. You have to keep very tight three lines, don't you? You don't allow space between the midfield and defence especially. So Howard seems used to push up right to the halfway line, and that's what you're supposed to do. But with Keane, I don't think that's his game, is it? Keane is a deep lying centre half, who's more comfortable defending at the end of his own box. And I think part of the problem is, for me, if 4-4-2, if Keane played, his natural tendency is to drop a little bit deeper as a centre half, and that creates that gap between midfield and defence, which Chelsea, used on Sunday. And I think that setup, I think led to it. But it's just, even at half time, you're thinking, okay, at least 2-0, we can get a goal early on the second half, and we come back for 15 minutes, probably even worse than what we were in the first half. And normally Carlo's been quite good at half time. A lot of performances like Man United, we've been better than what we were, before the break. But that just wasn't happening. And yeah, I'm not sure. Going pick on Plano's points, and did Carlo learn any more that he didn't know about the players already on Sunday? That would be. I
think he learned more about their character. Yeah, certainly, and that's an important part of a footballer's makeup nowadays. So yeah, a number of those players, I think, may not be, seeing long-term Everton futures as a result of that one performance. It's professional football. It's top-level professional football. You've got to produce it every minute of every game. And if you have little, sort of days off, you don't deserve to be at a football club. It's got big ambitions. Yeah.
Oh, has he seen that round the club over 3 months? On off the pitch, that actually somehow I know the players are not going to turn up for me on occasions. Just interesting.
Sam, I will come to you in a second. I want to pick up Gav on the thing you mentioned about Keane. It's interesting that when Sam Allardyce took charge, Keane was in a period of difficulty. Confidence was not as high as he would like, and Sam Allardyce quite clearly said to him, and he relayed this to us, was that he told him to simplify his game, and so if he's going to receive the ball, drop back, give himself 5 extra yards, don't put himself under pressure. Yeah. Is he still playing like that?
I suspect
and so is he still got his confidence still the issue?
I think, I suspect, and this goes back to Carlo's point after the game as well, he may be playing that, but he's not been told to play like that, and that might be one of the issues. That's just, people have natural styles.
Reverting to type.
Yeah. Especially when you're under the caution, you're struggling a little bit for form. And I just think Keane, I don't think helps in a 4-4-2, because he will play deeper, and you want the defence to push up and pressurise the opposition, and I think that contributes, I think, on Sunday. He's a better penalty box defender, isn't he?
Sam was Keane in the rest of the back four, and the goalkeeper not helped by a midfield that were unable to track, stop, put pressure on Chelsea's midfield?
I think Carlo's taken a few risks, hasn't he, since he's been appointed. And remember that Newcastle game when he made 5 changes, and I think people were quite surprised by the midfield that day, and and not that many people expected to kind of see maybe Tom Davies starting in that game, but whether his hand was forced or not, I think we just kind of struggled to get going, didn't we? And Sigurdsson, was left midfield by name, but kind of him and Bernard were playing very kind of inverted, and there was the Bernard injury as well, but there was just nothing in that midfield. Was there? Gav said that I generally, every person I've spoken to about the game has said that after 3, 4, 5 minutes, they were kind of saying, we're going to get back to there, because, it was the basics we weren't doing right. The midfield looked like they couldn't pass the ball a couple of yards. And, I think the thing with, you can forgive Gomez maybe because of the injury, but I think the thing with that midfield at the moment is that there's no kind of, the midfield, the engine room is where you want someone to maybe lead or inspire or take the game by a scruff of its neck. I think Michael Ball in his column this week has kind of said that for him as a young player at Everton, it was Gary Speed. He said that when he was a young player, games were starting to pass him by, and then you'd see Gary Speed run that extra 5 yards or put in that tackle. And over the years, we've had players like that, Tim Cahill and Mikel Arteta even, I think, players who just knew when a game needed something, maybe trying a risky pass or putting a boot in somewhere, and this midfield just doesn't have it, and I think that's what's the most disappointing thing. It's not that they don't have quality, because we've seen Sigurdsson do amazing things and score great goals. We've seen what Gomez can do. We've seen what Tom Davis can do, Bernard, Theo Walcott, but they just don't have the character to seemingly want to do it on a consistent basis. And when you go to Stamford Bridge and you've got to show a bit of bottle, and you know that there's going to be times in the game when you don't have the ball and it's backs to the wall, there was too many who just seemed like they would have rather just been on the train back home.
Yeah, the balance was very, very wrong, I think, and it has been for a little while. I mean, they had a gang of kids in midfield. I mean, Ross Barkley was the senior member of that midfield trio, and they're allowed to dictate the game. Very, very similar to how they were allowed to dictate it at Anfield in the FA Cup tie. And, it's happened a couple of times this season now, whereby you want to see a bit of snap, a bit of drive. What was the phrase Joe Royle used to tell his dogs of war? Go out there and discourage them. And it wasn't, basically saying kick them, but, it was like be aggressive, be in their face, don't let them settle on the ball. Everton allowed them to do that as they did at Anfield in that FA Cup tie. And so for me, the balance is wrong. It's we need new individuals in that midfield in the summer.
Is there a case, I'm just sort of thinking out loud, when the going was very quickly getting tough on Sunday, and as I said, the direction of the game was set early on, do you think that having that confidence and that sort of drive to be the one that, like Sam says with the Gary Speed, to take the risk and go and press, go and try and close down, try and put pressure. Do you think maybe because as another manager come in, there's going to be change in the summer? Do you think after a certain point in the game, maybe some players just, I'm looking after myself here. This could get really nasty, this scoreline. If I'm the one, I'm not going to be the one that's going to go and chase 15 yards, try and put pressure on Billy Gilmore. If he's just going to knock it round the side of me, and then there's going to be loads of space in behind, and we concede a fifth, and I'm going to get pelters. Do you think? I'm just thinking out loud. Are we at that point again? And we seem to be in this cyclical fashion of getting to a season when certain games come along, and maybe players are thinking, I just need to keep my head down because I could be the scapegoat here.
Well, now, by keeping your head down, you're making yourself a scapegoat. You've got to show the strength of character and personality to rise above that. I mean, Carlo Ancelotti is a massively experienced manager, and he knows what he's seeing. And if a player is, like as you say, protecting himself, he will spot that. He will want to see players who are making that extra run. Doing the Peter Reid run, trying to so nick the ball, trying to press high up the pitch. He'll appreciate that, and so they won't be doing themselves any favours. If anything, they'll be signing their own death sentence. I think they'll be moved on from the football club very quickly because he's an intelligent enough manager to be able to spot people behaving like that. So an awful lot of players in that team at the weekend did, I think, mark the manager's cards. And
equally then on maybe trying to leadership from a vocal point of view, and maybe try to rattle a few cages in that moment, like a Delph would do. And I'm not saying Delph would have been the answer on Sunday necessarily, but he would have had the strength of character to have pointed the finger and tried to get people going. Again, do you think maybe some players, and I'm talking generally throughout the team, were thinking, I don't want to be the one pointing fingers because I know I've been as bad as the guy next to me. And
well, this goes back to a pod about a month ago. We were talking about who could be the skipper. I think you made the point about it was difficult to find one, and I think that was a really good point that was made, and that issue will manifest itself on various occasions, and it certainly manifested itself on Sunday. I think, going back to your question, Phil, I think some of this is, and again, we've done this, is motivation, isn't it? If you've got players on their last big contract, and it's not, doesn't really make a lot of difference to them, just generally speaking, football terms. It's not gone unnoticed by several people that Calvert-Lewin's and Mason Holgate's worst performance for some time came in immediately after they've signed big contracts at the club. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be on a downturn, form completely, but, sometimes that can get into your head. It's, that all that goodwill and all that can sometimes affect you psychologically. So I think that there's a number of reasons, but the midfielders, we're going back, but what are we missing? 3 central midfielders. I mean, did Sneijder play at Goodison? I think he did.
You mean against
Chelsea?
I think he did.
Didn't he? Yeah. Iwobi played. Walcott played, and I think Sigurdsson played. So we had no defensive midfielder on Sunday. We had nobody who could sense danger when the opposition got the ball, and that's crucial. I mean, Tom and Andre went both fit and firing on a natural midfield partnership in a 4-4-2. And with Andre getting his way back into form and Tom being in and out the team, that was just a recipe of disaster. Especially as if you're playing 4-4-2 and you've got 2 in the middle, and they've got 3. What should happen is one of your wide men should come across to cover, or one of these centre forwards should pull back, and cover. And that second goal is where Gilmore picked. I know it was a good turn by him, but you see where Gilmore picks the ball up. He's got Sigurdsson on one side of the pit, 5 yards away from him, and Richarlison 5 yards away from him. Neither of them, and both of them had plenty of time, could have got him, blocked them off. Just that, and that's what you have to do in 4-4-2 when you're playing 4-3-3. And consequently, it was gone then, wasn't it? They just played around the middle too. And I think there was lots of reasons. I think attitude.
Why is there no kind of game management, isn't it? That why is someone like Sigurdsson, who's playing quite narrow, you can't point the finger at Gomez because he is on his way back from injury, but he's still, a player who's played for Barcelona, and Tom Davies, who has now must have racked up a fair few Premier League appearances. Why is no one just saying early doors, I'm not saying go out and two foot this kid, but stand on him and make sure he knows that he's in for a game.
Can I just say something? Anybody who's sat, probably you sat in the press box at Stamford Bridge, anybody who sat near that, you understand how close we are to the away dugout. So you get a really fairly unique vantage point of the manager, and you get to see how a lot of what he does and hear him a little bit. Very, very early on Sunday, Carlo was just pulling his hair out at how standoffish we were, how little we were pressing. In the build-up to the first goal, literally 20 seconds earlier, he'd had a go at players on this side, at the right-hand side, for not putting pressure on the ball. There remained no pressure on the ball, and Chelsea just play through it. I just wonder whether one of the things that Carlo has to rectify, and we spoke about it many times on the podcast, and it goes back to going away to these teams in the established top 6 and this wretched run that we've got. It's actually playing with a confidence and playing with, from the get-go, a belief and a way that we might not win, but we're going to be proactive and we're going to be aggressive because we just stood off and we got picked apart. And that I've seen that game hundreds of times. It feels like in that run, it's just that same performance, stand off, it's too late, and that for me felt a massive issue early on. And you could see it was for the manager.
Like the 5-0 at Stamford Bridge under Keane when we went into the game 6, didn't we? Yeah. Bit of optimism. We got a good bit of a momentum. We got beat 5-0, didn't we? I think, didn't Carlo come? He called Tom Davies over at one stage, didn't he, to the touchline? Yeah, to have words with him, I think, on Sunday. But it was just that lack of positioning and got to sense danger in the centre of mid, haven't you? And they just didn't sense danger. I mean, that fair, you can pick all goals apart, but that first one, which was crucial, Mason Mount was in 10 yards of space in our penalty area. Well, 3 of our players went to more 2 of their players, and Tom sort of going over to cover. Well, he should be looking behind him, and that was indicative of really poor display. And Mason had an off day, didn't he? Yeah. When you say early on, I think Willian beat him for the sprint. I mean, he was not the fastest in the parish, is he, these days, but quite easily outsped him.
Running through water, though, didn't he? When
Mason was you're looking at it thinking, something wrong here. Mason had a really poor game. But was involved in all 4 goals in some respect, but...
So taking then everything we've said, look at it at a different angle. Because it felt like such, in terms of a performance and the commitment that Ancelotti questioned, because it was such an anomaly in the type of attitude of performances that he has overseen. Is it just a bad day at the office?
You occasionally get bad days at the office, but that's the second, as I've said, under his watch. I mean, the other one was in the FA Cup tie as well. So, when does it stop being a bad day at the office and become a recurring theme? I personally think that a number of those players will have alerted him, sort of the potential for them to reproduce moments like that on, 4 and 5 and 6 occasions during the course of a season. And if you've got aspirations of being a team qualifying for Europe, you can't have those off days. And you certainly can't have them, at the big six, which, as we've spoken about previously, we have all the time. And that is a mentality issue. And if the players aren't capable of changing the mentality of going to the big six teams and being in your face and scrapping and fighting and, so trying to grind out a draw, for argument's sake, they need to be replaced. You need to bring in players of different, mental capacities that can do that.
Sam, appreciate that the manager has had injuries and illness, etc., to deal with throughout his 10, 11 league games, whatever it is now. But do you think, or do you get a sense that if everybody is fit, apart from a Gavin, who's obviously he hasn't seen yet, if everybody's fit who he has seen, do you think he knows his strongest 11?
To be honest, now the feeling I get, especially after games like we've watched on Sunday, is just that I don't think he needs to know his strongest 11 at this point. I think it's just now that we've kind of, we spoke a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, about United and Arsenal and Chelsea, and we kind of said, didn't we, the key is to just not get beat and let other teams make ground on you. We didn't beat United and we've lost to Arsenal and Chelsea, so unless there's a massive turnaround with some tough games like Spurs away, Liverpool at home, we're probably not going to get Europe. And I think Ancelotti will probably just continue experiment, but I just generally can't see that. Certainly a few started against Chelsea and then a few more knocking around the squad being there at the start of next season if Carlo and Marcel have the wish. So I think at this moment in time we're probably likely to see more changes, more ins and outs, and you've just got to hope that he'll have a squad that he is at least confident that can get a best team out of at the start of next season, because right now I think the season's just kind of came to a bit of an end.
It was indicative actually of that Anthony Gordon came on with half an hour to go.
Yeah.
A young kid, you're throwing him on in a game that's going horribly wrong and we're 4-0 down.
A bit like when Tom Davies came on in the 5-0.
Exactly, yeah. But it's there to see if you can handle it, so let's see you in a situation like this. And he did okay, did no worse than anybody else. So yeah, I think Sam's right. We are going to see more of that. We're going to see players introduced and players being given a little bit of opportunities to showcase what they can and can't do. I mean, the worrying thing is he's seen most of them already, and they're up and down, lots of inconsistency.
Where does he go from here, isn't it? Because I kind of thought the United game again was just kind of Ancelotti changing things up and maybe wanting to see what Michael Keane, for example, could offer in that defence. Hadn't played as much maybe as certainly Holgate and Mina a little bit as well. But then to keep his place, then it's kind of like. I'm not quite sure now. Did he keep his place on merit, or did Ancelotti just think again? I want to see more from him, kind of thing. So there's a few interesting subplots until the end of the season to see how much kind of game time people are given, and that might give us a clearer idea of who's in and who's not in kind of Carlo's inner circle or in his good books, isn't it? Because I think so far he hasn't really had a consistent selection, and there's other players like Iwobi and Bernard who've been in and out. So yeah, at the moment I just think it could be I know we've said it for the last 10 years, but it could be a massive summer for Everton.
Gav, I want to come to you in this because it's something you spoke about many times, and the sentiment's absolutely correct from Sam. You would look at Sunday and say, look, don't think X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But as we know full well from the past 2 summers, it's very, very difficult to offload all of these players at once. It's the impossible task, isn't it? Yeah. So is the onus actually, as well as Carlo being able to bring in a new centre half, a new central midfielder, right winger, etc., is the onus also on the manager? Look, I'm really sorry, but you're going to have to go and make X, Y, and Z better.
Yeah. I think Roy Keane said this is his hardest job in management, isn't he? And I think that's the type of thing Carlo maybe is not used to. His great centre's been getting tunes out of largely in his career, established players, and having proper man management. Sam's right. I mean, I think if you said what Carlo, what was your best 11, you'd probably say as well as only about 4 of them at the club. to be honest with you, ideally you'd want and you could name. Let's face it, you could name names there, couldn't you? Holgate, Calvert-Lewin. Of which there's still doubt over Holgate. Holgate, Calvert-Lewin, Richarlison, Mina, I do think has got, Dean, if he manages to pull himself out of the current, you know, sort of poor form. And I still think Pickford as well, to be honest with you. You know, so you're talking maybe, you know, going back to like Sam's, maybe 5 or 6 players.
Well, he said that himself last week, didn't he? He said we've got a spine.
Yeah. So you're then looking to then get a tune out of, you know, and getting motivating and getting the right balance for Iwobi, Gomez. I do worry about Bernard's future, to be honest with you. I do worry about Keane's future.
Yeah, the mood music for Bernard.
Is motivation the issue though? Does that unlock better from these players if they're more motivated? If Carlo can use his absolute wealth of man management, and whether it's a rollicking or arm around the shoulder, is that the key, or is it coaching, drills, the expertise in a footballing sense rather than a
it's blends of everything, isn't it, really? I mean, it's that age old. How do you motivate people on 100 grand a week? Just naturally, you know, that's Carlo's been his great skill as a manager. And so I think it's fine. There was obviously analysis last night on Monday Night Football, wasn't it, about 4-4-2 and Carlo a little bit antiquated in his thinking. But then again, Carlo said last week that actually it's 4-4-2, but you need players to play. You need players who can play all types of systems, and it's whether, you know, does Carlo need to always go with 4-4-2, where your 2 wide men aren't really wide men? You know, would you play a diamond? Say this season, would you play 4-4-2, hold a midfielder, say Gomez and Davies, and then Sigurdsson at the tip of the diamond behind two forwards? You know, and what I'm saying there, Phil, is like, it's a bit of everything. You know, tactics, motivation, you know, and getting that blend right, I think is
just interesting that you make that point, and I'd be inclined to think that that's a very sensible suggestion for a change in formation. But when you said it, I immediately thought Carlo said, because of the front two, he said a couple of weeks ago, crosses are so important for these two. Are we limiting ourselves by playing a narrow midfield 4?
You more onus on your 2 wingers than the 2 fullbacks to act as wingers, then, isn't it? But that's part of the problem with Sidibe, isn't it? Is that he spends half his time too far up the pitch and causes a problem,
or not having enough cover from somebody else because he's.
You know, I mean, you wouldn't do that against Liverpool because they'll just par down the flanks, won't they? But, you know, if you've got that same problem between now and the end of the season, and that was something you could do. I mean, say if Delford being fit on Sunday, that could have been an ideal setup, couldn't it? You're getting the best out of Sigurdsson. You've got 3 midfielders to block out their 3. Because they're not going to hit you that much down the flanks. They're going to play through you. And I just thought that maybe, does Carlo need to be a little bit more flexible tactically rather than, I'm going to do 3 lines. I mean, midfield 4, I'm just going to stick anybody in there. Which is effectively what's happening at the moment.
Yeah.
Because he's had going back to the point, Iwobi, Sigurdsson, Bernard, Walcott have all played wide. I think Tom maybe played wide at some point.
Possibly,
maybe,
City started.
I think he did, didn't he? Yeah. So, how many of them are natural, apart from Walcott? Natural. Bernard will always come inside, won't he?
All right then, Pred, I'll kick it on to you then. Playing devil's advocate, you're Carlo Ancelotti, and you believe 4-4-2 certainly defensively is the way forward, and of course it morphs into something slightly different attacking. But 4-4-2, that's the way he's had success largely, other than at Real Madrid. That's the way we're going to play at Everton. So the players who are currently here will play in that system, and then we will keep playing in the system. And in the summer, I will bring in 2 or 3 players that he mentioned playing that system. So I'm not going to mould the system around the players now because I don't believe X, Y, and Z are going to be good enough, or they have to be good enough because this is the way forward. Because there aren't players good enough, like at Real Madrid, where he changed the system to suit Cristiano Ronaldo, etc. So is it 4-4-2 is the way, and we will keep doing it and keep doing it?
I think he's clearly decided that is the case, and he wants to give those players the opportunity to see if they can fit into that system and can mould into it. And clearly they can't. I mean, if you're looking at short-term results, you would do what Gav said there. You would actually pick the personnel make the system fit the personnel that you've got. Gylfi Sigurdsson's never going to be a central midfielder as long as he's got a hole in his backside, So he's being given the opportunity to see if he can play in that role, and clearly he showed that he can't. So he's a number 10. He's not even a decent left-sided midfielder at the moment. He's a number 10, and the manager's saying, "Okay, here's your opportunity, to see if you can fit into the system," and he's proved he can't. Likewise, other players have showed they can't fit into it, which is why I think we'll see, some significant changes in the transfer markets in the summer, because he's made it clear that 4-4-2 is his preferred way of playing. He's not going to mould the players around him, sort of fit in a different system. Show me you can do it. Show me you can play in it. And at the moment, they're not doing it consistently enough. So I think we will see, other players brought in. I'm just trying to think of anybody that has actually, sort of sparkled at the moment, in that system. I mean, Andre Gomez will, because, he's still on his way back, and we knew that there was going to be a little dip in his form once that initial adrenaline rush, sort of has gone. Didn't think it'd be quite as quickly, as the weekend, but, he's forgiven for that reason. But, certainly across the midfield, nobody else has really, sort of jumped out there.
No. I think Bernard has, when we've been on the front foot at home, where he's come in from the left and played, moved in and played the phrase between the lines.
Yes,
I think we said that a few times that he's played well, but Bernard's problem is one of durability, as we mentioned last Friday.
And the wrong type of game as well. We don't have the ball.
But he has sort of been effective there, but so going back to the point is no Gabam, no Schneiderlin, no Delph, three defensive midfielders, and that contributes to poor performances elsewhere.
Gabamin's absence has made him a better player, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's the Jordan Henderson of Everton, isn't he? But
what's our hunch? I appreciate it's a very difficult question because we've seen him for next to no time. Yeah. Do we think he's the type of midfielder, based on Ancelotti saying we want energy and, physically he looks like he could cope with the Premier League. Do we think he's going to fit in?
Oh gosh,
a bit of energy in the midfield would be very welcome, wouldn't it? Really,
the fleeting moments we've seen of him, he's got presence. I mean, he struggled, when he was tossed on a Crystal Palace, but he wasn't expecting to appear as quickly as that. He improved significantly in the next game, but then we didn't see him after that, so we don't know. It's a simple answer. I'm not so sure he is the kind of midfielder that has intensity and energy. He looks like, more of a presence that
got a bit of a Fellaini kind of vibe to him, hasn't he? Just kind of a little bit languid, but still kind of like in that kind of Fellaini way of just getting himself around the field and breaking play.
Fellaini getting around the field maybe the issue, though, isn't it?
Fellaini regularly posted the highest kilometres covered per match, so he was deceptive, Fellaini. He covered an awful lot more ground than people accepted. And if Gabam could do that, great. But we don't know yet.
Hugely underrated player, Fellaini.
That's
a separate discussion. The only problem I have with Gabam, not the problem with Gabam, is the Gabam Gomez middle two in a 4-4-2. Because Gabam is like Gomez. You're not going to get many assists or goals out of him per season. However, Andre passes the ball and stuff like that in terms of hitting the opposition. Neither of them are going to hit the opposition that much.
You can get away with that if you've got wide players
who can score, and that's what he said, hasn't he?
That's why this right winger.
And we need the left footer. We have more left footed players on the pitch, and I think. If we can get a lot more goals from the two wide players at the Moyard at the moment, then we can probably get away with that. But it's finding them, isn't it? Because Bernard's a couple of goals a season guy. Iwobi, a couple of goals a season guy. Sigurdsson's not going to score there as long as he's got a Pedro says, so
they're hard to identify in European football. Think how much Arsenal paid for Pepe, and we were linked with him. It never happened, and I think he's got about 3 or 4 this season. He's been. Bear in mind our transfer budget is limited. Probably it's going to be a real difficult thing to do. So it's a big challenge. Going back to Sam's point is, it's. There's a lot of work big to be done there, isn't it?
It's just more frustrating, isn't it? That last season you thought we kind of had that base of, Sigurdsson got, roughly 15, Richarlison roughly 15. So then you think, we've signed Moise Kean. If Calvert-Lewin could fire the way he has done, we just needed one more person to kind of score those goals. But obviously Sigurdsson's fell off dramatically, and Keane hasn't quite had that consistent run the team. But, it could. I know what you're saying, but it could still all come together.
I do agree, because I think that if you're right, you're taking a very basic overview, but the better teams, of course, and naturally makes sense, don't rely on 2 players to score their goals. They have 3, 4 players who, as Sam says, are chipping in with 10 to 15, 16, 17 goals a season. This season we've got Richarlison, Calvert-Lewin. We don't have Sigurdsson. And that's why that right winger for me, as much as we've got problems in midfield and defence, that's a game changer.
Do you still think there's this option that they might end up playing Richarlison-wise, right?
Possibly.
I don't think so.
What do you mean, give Moise Kean a more prominent role next season?
If they're being held to a king's ransom to buying a right wing. And
it's difficult because Carlo has said he prefers him up front, isn't he?
Yeah. He's proved he can play that role. He's such a good player. But that depends an awful lot on Moise Kean's development. And, at the moment, he doesn't appear to be developing as quickly as we thought. Kean,
and I think we mentioned this in the podcast afterwards, and we were talking about the Newcastle game. He played really well. And we were saying that's the first time he's played for us that you could see why there was a little bit of a fuss over him in Italy last season and stuff. And he plays really well, scored, bit of confidence, really powerful on the night. Was probably our best player.
Yeah.
And he's been given very limited game time since, I think.
Well, if you read Royal Blue on Saturday morning, you would have seen that ahead of Sunday's game, in the games he's played in the league under Ancelotti and the league games he played under Silva, his average game time was exactly the same.
Yeah, I was going to make the point, having read Royal Blue, which I was going to on Saturday, is considering you've got to carefully manage younger players, would you not be too happy with that?
I think from what Carlo said, and he mentioned something to Sky ahead of the United game, he said he's been unfortunate because Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin have been in such great form. And I think while Europa League is still a possibility, and I appreciate after Sunday's result it's become less of a possibility, I don't see him starting Moise Kean. That's just my reading of the situation. And that's not
makes a lot of sense.
It's difficult on the lad, but
I think there's been times where he could have had a bit more game time. And I was a bit disappointed in that. Not the Royal Blue column. No, it was just an interesting. But it's not happened for him since then.
But maybe if there comes a point in the next couple of weeks and results don't go our way,
I suspect Carlo just more time.
Okay, and final part of today's pod. He has been mentioned already, but in an interview with RMC in France last night, Sidibe making it clearer again that he would like to stay beyond the end of his loan. Of course, says he waits a decision from the football club, but says that the coach has faith in him and likes him. Look, asking these sort of questions after a performance that he delivered on Sunday is always going to skew opinion. But, we try and take things, the wider picture here on this podcast. What, if we had to make a decision today, what would we do?
That made up my mind. No. He's decent quality going forward, but not good enough defensively. And, if we're looking to progress as a football club, so we need better than that. It sounds like a harsh assessment, and clearly, I'm coloured by what I witnessed at the weekend, which, a lot of people didn't perform, but he was comfortably the worst. And that happens, you have so absolute nightmare days. But we haven't seen sufficiently consistently good performances, throughout his tenure to suggest that, that was just a one-off. We can, indulge him in that one. Quality of delivery into the box has been decent generally, but not, so, oh my God, great, not Trent Alexander-Arnold, so good. So, we need better than that, I'm afraid. It's been okay. I can't think of anything that would change my mind and think that, so maybe I'm being a bit harsh there. No, I've made my mind up already.
Sam?
Yeah, probably with Preno that I thought he looked a little bit shaky the first time I ever seen him play against Lincoln, and then there was a bit of an upturn, wasn't there? And he chipped in with a couple of assists, but there's not been anything to say that for I know £12 million in football these days is not a lot of money for someone who's won the World Cup, but I even don't think that if you send Sidibe back and you get Kenny back, I don't think you're losing for what Kenny offers defensively, maybe lacks going forward, probably just even out around the same, don't they? But I just think for where we want to go and for what Ancelotti wants to do, I just cannot see Carlo Ancelotti with his 3 Champions League kind of saying to Marcel Brands, this summer I think he's someone that I can build a defence with him at right back, and he seems like a nice guy and he's going to do a job before the end of the season, but I think it's thingy that already I'm starting to think, bloody hell, him up against Salah or Mane and on Monday will be interesting. I don't think his positioning's very good. Sometimes he can look very flat-footed. He's been caught out, at Arsenal. I still think he was at fault as well. Although Michael Keane should have done better for that Pedro goal. So, to be honest, as you said, Phil, it's difficult to say after a game like that, isn't it? But I don't think many Everton fans would want to see him permanent.
Gav, Sam's right in many ways in saying, 12, 13 million quid isn't a lot of money for a World Cup winner, but it's a lot of money for us. Yeah. Even in this new era we find ourselves in because of Premier League profit and sustainability, etc. Because there's almost a little bit of an unknown about Kenny. He's out in Germany playing, doing well from all accounts.
Struggled a bit recently, I think, hasn't he? Like Schalke could have struggled a little bit, yeah. I
don't know. I'm what I'm getting at is maybe, maybe can't be too choosy at right back because it feels to me there are priorities elsewhere to spend money on.
We've spoken about that, haven't we? And if Sidibe come in and plays really well, we say, okay, it might be worth it. But I agree with the lads that, I mean, he did provide one moment of quality on Sunday, which was the through ball for Walcott, where he got behind the defence. But it's almost setting the tone. He set the tone for our performance. He didn't giving the ball away, I think, twice in the opening 5 minutes. Stupid passes to the opposition. And you are right, regardless about whether you think he's good enough or not, 12 or 13 million for in a position where we've potentially got 2 decent-ish players next year, would seem to be a bit of a luxury for us.
Summed up by Dean, isn't it? We need to get someone younger than Baines, and we done that with good quality, didn't we? But I don't think signing Sidibe would even, at his age, be an upgrade on Coleman. So we're looking for a Dean level at right back.
I'll tell you what this entire conversation is doing, is underlining the quality of David Moyes' recruitment at the football club. I mean, he got a few wrong, but, so largely got good value for money, players who had character. Yeah. And, we need to try and revive that level of recruitment again.
I don't think Sidibe's issues is temperament. I just think it's his
defensive quality,
lack of tactical awareness,
lack of socks as well on occasion.
Well, So do you think there's actually? Are you saying, Gav? You think we would be in a better off position at right back? I'm not saying the answer, but a better off position by saying to Sidibe, "Thanks very much. We're sending you back." Bringing John Joe back and having another season to take stock with Coleman and Kenny as our 2 options.
I think we'd have a better, not necessarily, but I think we'd have a better position as a squad by not having Sidibe, bringing John Joe Kelly is a new Irish fullback, John Joe Kelly in and freeing up 13 million quid to develop the squad elsewhere where it's probably needed a bit more. I think that's...
Or do you send Sidibe back, sell Kenny because there will be people who want him?
Yeah. And bring another
and try and find.
Well, but it goes back to the other. Is a right back that the area is.
But if you're freeing up,
it's maths then, isn't it?
If you're freeing up the money that perhaps wasn't necessarily guaranteed, on the budget, and said to Carlo, right, this is what you've definitely got. But then say we go, right, we're going to send Sidibe back, no money on him now. Kenny comes back, but we're going to sell him. Right, you've suddenly got 13 million quid to go and spend on a right back.
And I'm just thinking back to, didn't Brand say we look forward to having John Joe back at
Well, he did.
Next year, but that could be.
He did, but I don't think, from what I can understand, that a decision has been made.
No, that could be, but John Joe, welcome back. Oh, by the way, we want to transfer you to, Cologne or somewhere like that, Yeah, you could say, get money for, don't want to sell Kenny, but talk about get money and invest some of that in the full-back and some of it in the squad elsewhere. I mean, neither Kenny or Coleman, I think, are the answer for us at right back. But in terms of a season where we can probably get away with both, whilst attending to firefighting other issues elsewhere in the squad, which are right winger, maybe centre mid, centre back.
And look, and I appreciate football's not a charity, but does Kenny, has he earned the right to, having been out on loan in Germany, has he earned that right to come back and show if he's good enough rather than the club making the decision?
It's an interesting thing, isn't it? Both. It's not a charity, it's a business, isn't it? And that's how clubs operate. Developing young talents, selling at a profit, because it's all profit, isn't it, for academy players? Being an interesting one, that. I'd rather be having, maximise the amount of money we got.
Yeah. Okay, before we really kicked while we're down, Martin Atkinson's the ref on Monday.
Oh, don't.
It feels like he refs every derby.
I heard that literally just before I popped out at lunchtime, and it just gave me this sinking feeling. I mean, obviously we all remember the Jack Rodwell derby so acutely, but he was also in charge of the semi-final against Man City when Sterling took the ball out and crossed it, and Phil Jagielka took him to task over it. And rather than just ignore him or accept the fact that he'd got one wrong, he started having an argument on the pitch with Phil Jagielka. What did he describe him as afterwards? As being this really,
arrogant
attitude, and it fills me with dismay. I know he's got issues with Liverpool as well. He's just not a very good referee, full stop. Wasn't he in the VAR box at the weekend? When I heard that, I thought, damn, I'm not comfortable with that. Fortunately, it made no difference whatsoever. There's so many referees we could say that about, to be honest. I've had issues, but he's one that does have significant history with Everton and significant history in this fixture. So that concerns me.
Any more on that, lads? Or?
Not much you can say. How does someone get 7 Merseyside derbies in a referee career? I think that's quite bizarre. I don't know. I think to win on Monday we're going to need a bit of luck, aren't we? And already it just kind of feels like you're probably not going to get much off him, and I don't think he's going to get a very good reception either. So,
although I suppose we should balance that out by saying we've probably got bigger issues on Monday than the referee.
Just about.
Yeah. We spoke about someone on last pod, didn't we? About he was the ref who stopped Jagielka going through against Man United, didn't he?
Is that right? I'd forgotten about that one as well.
Yeah. When that incurred Moise's wrath.
Of course, yes. Yeah.
Well, was that a Graham Poll? I've decided it's time moment.
We could carry on another half hour on this, couldn't we? Keep the cameras on.
Oh dear. Okay, we will wrap it up there. We will reconvene later in the week to properly preview the derby. Monday night, of course, at Goodison, what should be a very, very interesting game. But thank you very much for listening, chaps. Thank you very much for your company and opinion and insight. Excellent, as always. So thank you very much for listening. This has been the Royal Blue Podcast.
The Royal Blue Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.